She took human form every time she was hit by moonlight, for she did not belong to the mortal world. However, this secret was seen by the man, but he did not find it strange. Just see him calmly pick up the stone on the ground, gently knocking on the side. The moonlight was instantly covered by dark clouds. At this time, the woman also slowly began to produce changes. Not a moment's time will be transformed into the original real body. It turns out that just the day before yesterday, the woman, in order to escape the wedding, was actually pursued by their own men. But the thought that they are all brought out of the soldiers, it is not good to kill, she also had to avoid everywhere. She thought she had broken through the siege, but unexpectedly she was stabbed by the deputy general who suddenly appeared. So she was like a meteorite cutting from the air, and this rare sight just happened to be discovered by the man in the distance. The moment she landed on the ground, not only did her spiritual energy completely dissipate, she couldn't even maintain her human form and could only reveal her true form. Just by the next day, she had already been caught in a cage by the butcher. Just then, the man from last night happened to come to the market, while he took a glance at this different chicken.
行，那我给你便宜点。不用不用，它就值这个价。
Unexpectedly, the man was so strange that he said he would buy it at the original price. Back home, the man was going to clean her up, but he didn't know that she couldn't swim, and almost turned into a soup chicken, so the man had to fish her up. After some tossing and turning, the stomach is also hungry. I did not expect the man is also quite thoughtful, instantly send a good food, but also for her to take a name, change for Clucking D. But the man just left. There are people over the fence and thought it was a thief. I did not think it was a beautiful girl, but also exceptionally diligent. Not a moment's effort to do all the chores are done, is trying to slowly approach in the observation for a while. I did not think that the girl is so violent, without saying anything, will be used to catch her to make soup to make up for the body. This time the little life will be unprotected. Think of it, hurriedly escape. I do not expect to take off again in the moment to be caught, and the girl will be caught, but not yet have time to sigh. It is too late to sigh, the girl has already begun to sharpen the knife. Even the soup is boiling, the hands and feet of the numbness has really let the heart of the people to admire. The next moment Cluckdy was seized, but also pressed on the sticky board, even if the struggle is useless. Just in this hand up and down moment. She just need to use her mouth to gently peck, can be turned into gold, but unfortunately to keep less than 3 seconds will be turned back to its original form, just because she really want to eat meat, but the man is too poor, every time to cook the food is not a bit of grease, but she is originally the spiritual world of the martial arts, this every day to eat fasting is really cannot carry. And all this was seen by the man, he had to pick up the only remaining loose money under the flower pot, intending to buy her 2 tails of meat. The next morning, the man was ready to go out, want her to look after the house. I did not expect her to follow, but also asked the man to carry her out. Just to the market there are selling pork yell, look at the cackle, is greedy, but the man money is not enough, can only let her wait. Just at this time, a fortune teller shouted over, only to see Mr. Eloquent. Said the fat man is a blank stare, but Xingyan glanced to see, this fortune telling is half a bucket of water, helpless really cannot see, had to remind the fat man on the sidelines, the afternoon home is in trouble, it is best to hurry back. Witty fat man instantly feel bad, this 2 people sing and is a gang of it. Now say would also no longer believe, and then take back the money on the table, turned his head and left, which can be the fortune teller to the angry, which just set up the stall. I thought the business was actually stirred up. Xingyan see him unconvinced, to bet with him 10 coins, betting that the fat man will come back after lunch to thank, but unexpectedly the fortune teller is looking at his arms clucking deep, if Xingyan lost, take the chicken to compensate. The next step is to wait for Fatty's return with peace of mind. Xingyun took Klakata with him and happily strolled around the market, but this feeling of being protected and happy was something she had never experienced before. Soon, in the late afternoon, they once again came to wait in front of the fortune-telling stall. Meanwhile, Fatty, with pork in his hand, staggered and hurriedly ran over, and with a thud, he even knelt down with both feet.
要不是恩人让我速速回家，恐怕我的老娘已经烧死在了柴房啊！若恩人不嫌弃，我找2块肉，请恩人收下。
And Nebula, who had just finished collecting the pork, then stretched out his hand, and the fortune teller hastily took out his copper coins, with a look of adoration in his eyes. Fortune teller sees Xingyan is about to leave, hurriedly went forward to ask for help. Let Xingyan see if he can also give himself a fortune telling.
你呀，必有血光之灾。
The woman begged the man to help her figure out where her husband was. It turned out that her husband had been marching for 15 years, but there was no news of him until now. Unexpectedly, although Xingyan could see the cause and effect, he had a hard time telling the truth and was really unwilling to tell the situation, so he could only politely refuse the woman's request. As for Cluckaday, she is also a military general who has marched and fought in wars, and in her heart she knows the pain of this, so she decides to go forward to the woman's home to help take a look at the situation. When the man found out, he could not help but sigh that this chicken was just too idle. Unexpectedly on the way there, he detected a familiar aura, so she followed this aura all the way, and a few moments later, she arrived at the woman's house, only to find that his wife's husband Yuanshan was actually accompanying her, never wanting to leave. The next moment, the man Yuanshan discovered the existence of Klakita, mistakenly thought that the home came to the evil, chasing Klakita to fight, unaware that Klakita is trying to come to help, but she is now not spiritually able, and did not restore the person. Now fight and cannot fight, really anxious round and round. accidentally even by the man Yuanshan hit, immediately let nailed to the stone, cannot move. But at this time the cackling De has not had time to explain. Just now the woman heard the movement also followed out, did not expect to be smashed in the head, immediately fainted. It turned out to be Xingyan deliberately smashed. Cluck De saw him also came, then informed Xingyan of the situation, but unfortunately she now cannot change life. There is no way to deal with the man's Yuanshan, but unexpectedly Xingyan has a way. He then began to fiddle with the stones on the ground, and soon a simple formation was made, and right after that he began to shout, and giggled it quickly flew towards the formation. She finally changed back to her human form. She held a long spear and slowly floated in. This valiant and handsome look put Xingyun on the sidelines were dumbfounded. Then, she quickly struck, and the man's Yuanshan was then suppressed by the lance, instantly unable to move. Then, Shenli convinced the man that she could help him meet his wife, and the couple could finally embrace each other after 15 years. The man first intentionally slipped on his feet, then fell backward and fell into the water with a thud, and he actually did this to test whether the woman would save him or not. Unexpectedly, Shenli did not know how to swim at all. She thought that Xingyan lived in this neighborhood, should be able to learn the water. Unexpectedly, she watched him with bated breath, and in a moment, he had sunk into the lake, and in a hurry, Shenli had to jump down indignantly. At this time, the lake Xingyan is slightly open eyes, secretly look at Shenli, found that she has slowly swim over. He was secretly happy in his heart, and immediately continued to pretend to be unconscious. However, Xingyun had counted on everything, but he had not counted on Shenli grabbing a handful of his floating hair as she approached, and yanking it to swim towards the surface of the lake like this. Even at this time Xingyun is very difficult, but also in the water, there are bitter cannot say. He was very puzzled, how and what he thought of the plot is not quite the same. Shenli looked at the hair tugged on his hand, and was a little weak, and quickly pulled away from the topic. Now that he has saved his life, it is also considered to repay the favor. It is time to say goodbye. She was just about to stand up, unexpectedly changed back to the appearance of a mountain chicken. However, this side in front of the eyes happened to be far away from the person to see. Then he told this magical things, told the city's eldest son Gu Qingrui. It turned out that he is looking for strange people and strange things, heard such a magical things, just raised his interest, then he let his men to go, must be brought back to the person. At this time Shenli is unable to change back to its original form, feel puzzled, this is too abnormal, they have obviously recovered very well, but on the contrary, has always been this appearance, is puzzled to explain, she threw the doubt to the line cloud. Xingyan seemed to answer, in fact, he has been desperately dry rice, not a round of work, but even the remaining meat to dry out, this can be Shenli angry back teeth are going to bite.
哎，肉呢？你给我吐出来，吐出来！我一口都没吃呢。
We just finished lunch, someone came to the door, Xingyun just walked out, the other party kicked him hard. Although Xingyun had no hands, but he still had a bright head, he hurriedly pushed down the stone on the side, and in an instant, all the formations around the courtyard were extruded, and a flash of light appeared at first sight in the back room, and it seemed that there was a domineering aura brewing.
放肆！哪儿来的仗势欺人的东西？
我等奉清圣城城主大公子之令，特来请先生入府一叙，还请姑娘知趣一些。
知趣。
Since the woman's help, the man can be said to be full of happiness, really do not have to worry about being broken hands. It didn't occur to him that she also had the ability to cut vegetables automatically. While sighing, his sudden turn caused his heart to beat violently. While he was frozen, Xingyun realized that his arm actually seemed to be unable to move as if it was out of his control. Looking at Shenli's gradually turning red cheeks, he was a bit at a loss for words. Afterward, in order to ease the atmosphere, Shenli hurriedly came out to calm down and cool down, but when she looked at her reflection in the water, she couldn't believe that such a thing as blushing could actually happen to her. On the other hand, Xingyan knew that she liked to eat meat, so he made his specialty of braised pork, and even though he broke his hand, it didn't delay his play. It didn't take long for a delicious lunch to be ready, and he slowly came to the door.
子离，吃饭了。
Unbeknownst to her, this simple sentence gave her a marvelous feeling, but at this time, Shenli was unable to say anything about this feeling. At the dinner table, Shenli joked that she wanted Xingyun to be her cook, but unexpectedly he readily agreed. Looking at Shenli gulping down the braised meat, Xingyun was also unusually satisfied. At this moment, the two of them were getting along as if they were husband and wife, and the two of them were now getting more and more harmonious. In the middle of the conversation, Xingyun had a premonition that there would be a guest visiting in a while, and instructed Shenli to wait inside the house first. Sure enough, before long, someone rushed in with a row of thugs, and the person who came was none other than Gu Qingrui. Fei Yin is not panicked, but also taunted him to bring so many people, their own here is just a cup. Gu Qingrui is not angry, directly let the fighters to the outside waiting, after all, this time to come is also a request, first courtesy, or to do. And this time Gu Qingrui's purpose, needless to say, Xingyun already guessed, is nothing more than want to replace his father as soon as possible, world, to obtain the status of the city master. So Xingyun directly opened the door and rejected his request. But what Gu Chengrui didn't expect was that Xingyun didn't care about glory and wealth. Since that was the case, Gu Chengrui no longer gave him a good face, picked up his teacup and splashed it over. Then, the fighters swarmed up, and instantly dozens of swords and knives were lit up. Gu Chengrui picked up the boiling hot teapot and wanted to pour it on. Just then, Shenli smashed over with a stick.
大岳父像轻薄的样子。
你就当我是要轻薄你吧。
It was this gentle kiss that actually made Shenli ferry 500 years of cultivation, and what she wished for was that Xingyun could be safe and joyful in this life, although his life was very short and it might not be worth it to do so. But for Shenli, it did not matter whether it was worth it or not, it only lay in the willingness to do so. However, what she didn't know was that this goodbye had become the final meeting with Xingyun. Time back to before, Xingyun not very poisoned, Shenli used spiritual power to help him heal his injuries, although this action can temporarily relieve the pain, but cannot be cured. In order to cure his injuries, Shenli decides to first go in search of an earth immortal who knows the art of healing. Meanwhile, the pursuers of the progenitor were already on their way. Fortunately, there was Mo Fong to help her block them first for the time being. But Shenli knew that there was not much time left for her. After a few moments, Shenli came to the high mountains and found the Earth Immortal who knew the art of healing, and the Earth Immortal promised that within half an hour, the poison in Xingyun's body could be dispelled. So, Shenli instructed the Earth Immortal to look for the man in blue under the pavilion, and to report back as soon as possible after saving the man, and the Earth Immortal didn't dare to delay and went there immediately. However, unexpectedly, the Earth Immortal in the treatment of Xingyun, the two deaths of the border has come. It seems that Mo Fong has won against two, cannot delay much time. At this time they let the Earth Immortal to bring the message, threatening that if Shenli does not come back, here Xingyun will not be able to protect his life. After receiving the message, the Earth Immortal quickly returned, and Shenli realized that Xingyun is still in danger, had to give up the original plan. At the time of this strange sound in the sky, the two fiends know what it is. Then the two idiots began to convey Lin Zun's order to bring Shenli back to the spirit world for marriage, and then began to threaten Xingyun's life. Just then, a vat of lances flew in sharply with killing intent. She was born with a bead, but unexpectedly, the power of this bead was too strong. Her mother had to take it out first, and then on her deathbed before entrusting the bead to Shenmuyu for safekeeping. And this bead, it is the Bihai Sang bead, which is also the origin of Bite Sang King Shenli. Shenli felt the temperature brought by the spirit bead, as if his mother was beside him. At this time, Shenmuyu returned the spirit bead to her, hoping that she could use it to repair her spiritual power, and that no more unnecessary threats would arise. From this action, it could be seen that she had already regarded Shenli as her own place. Next, Shenmuyu exerted her spiritual power and sent the spirit bead into Shenli's body, hoping that she could protect her in the future. On the other hand, Shenli's betrothed, Fu Rong, was suffering from nightmares. Although Furong has never seen Shenli with her own eyes, she often heard that she braved the void sky abyss alone and could swallow demons in her mouth. Every time he thought of these, Furong was afraid, only because he could not even bear to lay his hands on a chicken since he was a child. How could he dare to marry such a stalwart daughter? And now the nightmare is haunting him, and he is close to the edge of collapse, until he got the advice of a friend to go to the spirit world to make trouble for his chickens and dogs, in the hope that he would escape from the marriage contract again. But unexpectedly, this method made him instantly enlightened, and so he hurried to the spirit world, not knowing that at this time, the Xingji and Shenli had already returned to the spirit world together. He was unaware that Xingji and Shenli had already returned to the spirit world together. But unexpectedly, Xingji just came to this place, and started his deadly skill. He is going to stay in the Lin boundary. Shenmuyu was a bit flustered and hastened to shrug it off. After all, she was worried that Xingji would discover the secret on Shenli. However, the next Xingji's decision is to make her shocked off the horse. Xingji actually also want to live in Shenli's residence, but also beautiful name and Shenli get along with the most familiar. Shenmuyu still want to try to shirk, not expected Xingji directly come sentence.
就是不肯让我住，是吗？
既然神君小住在此，这段时间你便要尽地主之谊。
Then, the spirit father let Xingji go back to rest first and wanted to talk privately with his disciple Shenli. In the conversation, Shenli to acquiesce to the marriage with the immortal world. After the last fight with the spirits, she knows that their strength is powerful and indeed not something she can easily fight against, not to mention that there are still tens of millions of them in the deep heavenly abyss, and to this day, the only way to permanently keep the seal is to get purified by the immortal monarch. After chatting with the spirit sovereign, Shenli returned to the mansion, unexpectedly saw the eyesore side. There is a strange man showing off in front of her. Twin girls look exactly the same, but their mother never dared to let them go out at the same time, because in the ancient Joseon dynasty, twins represent an ominous sign. As long as the court found out, the side will be killed. This day, the younger sister because of playfulness, secretly slipped out of the home. but not yet out of a few steps, suddenly was a small beggar knocked down. See, the other side of the jade pendant fell to the ground. The girl picked up and wanted to return him, but unexpectedly at this time the small beggar but pulled up her legs to run. The original jade pendant is he stole. At this time a male is following behind her to chase her, not long before the two will be caught. The male just wanted to pull them to see the official. The small beggar suddenly fell to his knees, and then cried and told the two he stole because his father is very sick, if not by medicine, will die soon. The girl heard that he felt very poor, so they will be on the body of all the money to him. The little beggar hurriedly kowtowed to thank, and expressed his apologies to the male. But in the small beggar left, the male is not that the girl and he is a gang. Directly a hand removed her head rope, and then want to tie her with their own to see the official. But the girl is not panicked at all, because her father is the dynasty's governor Jiang adults, she told the gentleman. But the gentleman heard but do not believe it, and a haughty face told her, even if her father is Jiang adults, he is not afraid, because he is the future king of the country. Seeing this, the girl thought that he was bragging with her, so she immediately lectured at him. The male son saw this, just wanted to retort, then a grandmother suddenly came over to find the two. It turned out to be his son far away from home came to the letter. They cannot read, so they want to find him to help read it. The girl explained the contents of the letter for the grandmother, and then also thoughtfully wrote a reply for her. When she saw that the gentleman had been looking at the son, the girl assumed that he was busy with something, so she shouted for him to write his name to her, and then when she returned home, she would take her father to his house to identify herself. But the gentleman told her that his name was not one that ordinary people could write, so he came forward and clutched the girl's little hand and wrote his name on a piece of paper. But after returning, before the girl could bring her father to him, a sudden change occurred in her home. Her father was to be exiled to the countryside because he was falsely accused by a treacherous court official, and she was so angry that she scolded the dog official who came to see the joke when she was on her way out. When the official gets angry, he sends his thugs to teach her a lesson, so she asks her sister to help her hide in a box. The fighters mistook her for someone else and tried to take her away. In the midst of the tugging and pulling, they accidentally pushed the wooden box into the water. By the time her sister escaped from them, her sister was long gone, and the Shitsi, who got the news and rushed to see her off, was unable to see her one last time. How could the king not expect that he would meet his first childhood love on the day of the consort selection? He excitedly asked if the other party still recognized him, but unexpectedly, the other party did not have any impression on the king. Although the king was a little disappointed, he instantly became happy again when he learned that the other party was the daughter of Lord Jiang after inquiring. The girl also instantly realized that the king had mistaken himself for his sister, who was not alive. Looking at the king who was so affectionate, she was quite fond of him and fell in love with him in a short time. However, on the day of their wedding, the wedding party was suddenly attacked by a killer, and the princess died on the spot. The king watched his beloved die in front of him, so he went to her in a state of panic, and was also killed by the assassin. But just when the city was in a state of panic, a woman who looked exactly like the dead princess suddenly appeared on the street in a worried manner, because the gun that assassinated the king was sold by her a few months ago. In order not to fall into trouble, that night, she pretended to be a palace maid at the wake and mixed into the palace, wanting to remove the slug that was in the king's body. But just as she went up to pick up the king's head, the king suddenly grabbed her, and then directly opened his eyes. The girl was so scared that she ran out. At this time, an adult just passing by, see in front of the girl actually looks exactly the same as the dead princess. He could not help but be scared, directly froze on the spot. Soon, the news of the king's resurrection spreads, and the ministers are all talking about it, and the ministers from the party of Wusang Kim feel that the king's resurrection is against heaven's reasoning, and that they should elect the son of Li, whom they have just found, as the king of the kingdom, in order to stabilize the hearts of the people. On the other hand, the heavy ministers of the left minister Zhao's party felt that the resurrection of the king was a heavenly fate, and that it was because the king had the fate of a heavenly ruler that he was resurrected, and that he should be allowed to continue to succeed the throne and revitalize the dynasty. And in order not to let the king be criticized by the people, the left minister also secretly found the Empress Dowager late at night, proposing that he could put all the blame for this crime on the Jiang family, spreading the news that it was because of their unidentified daughters that they had brought this calamity to the king. Seeing this, the Empress Dowager agreed, and on the next day, she directly arrested Lord Jiang for the crime of deceiving the king, and prepared to execute him in public to invite the world. Just before the execution, the girl who got the news suddenly appeared in the execution ground. It turns out that the identity of the girl is no other than Jiang Yan, the daughter of the Jiang family, who accidentally fell into the water 10 years ago. At the moment before her father's execution, the girl who got the news suddenly appears at the execution ground. It turns out that the girl's identity is no other than Jiang Yan, the daughter of the Jiang family, who accidentally fell into the river 10 years ago. After falling into the river, although she was lucky to save her life, she also lost her memory because of the injury, and by mistake, she and her best friend did black injuries in the black market. And when Lord White saw her in the palace, he immediately thought of the twin daughters in his best friend's family, so he sent someone to invite Unpa to his home in the night and told him all about his life. After meeting his father, all of Enpu's lost memories instantly came flooding back. But this first meeting in decades also turned directly into an eternal farewell for the two. She finds Lord White and tries to find out who killed her sister and mutilated her father. Lord White told her that because her father was not involved in any party fights, both the left and right ministers in the palace were possible. Now, if she wants to find out the truth, there is only one way to do so, that is to re-enter the palace to participate in the selection of the princess, to become the princess, and to draw out the mastermind who wants to kill her. In this way, under Lord Bai's arrangement, Enpu first found the Empress Dowager as the resurrected royal consort, and gained her support on the grounds that she had helped her to find out the culprit who had assassinated the emperor. Immediately after that, after all the etiquette training by Lord Bai, she finally enrolled for the selection again as the Hong family's daughter. But unexpectedly, right at the time of registration, the daughter of the Prime Minister who had met her sister before mistook her for the resurrected royal consort, and directly sat on her but in fear. The girl wanted to run for the crown princess, but unexpectedly the first level of the competition was no makeup. The palace maidens took out white cloths and kept wiping the lips of the showgirls, and all those who had lipstick on their mouths would be deducted points. The first few people all passed with flying colors, but when it came to Enpu, she clearly did not spit lipstick, but the white cloth was stained with red leaves. The sister gave him a look and was ready to deduct points for him. Seeing this, Enpu hurriedly explained that she hadn't put on any makeup at all and asked them to check again. However, when the maid took out a white cloth and rechecked it, the white cloth was still stained with lipstick. Enpu tried to defend herself, but Choi Sang-gung ordered Enpu to lose 2 points for being a smart-ass. Enpu's heart is very aggrieved. She knows that she must have been tripped up, because on the day she entered the palace, she had a conflict with the Prime Minister's youngest daughter, Kim Ju-yeon, and was mistaken by the king for the dead princess during the audience, which caused the queen consort to be very dissatisfied, but there is no evidence, so now she can only eat this dumb loss. Soon came the second level of the competition. The Shang Palace ordered to let all the showgirls with a towel dipped in water to wipe the face of the powder. Enpu, who had suffered a loss once, picked up the towel and sniffed it, instantly realizing that something was wrong. The fat lady on the side sees her face look off and asks her what happened. After that, Enpu looked at her palm just after touching the towel, and sure enough, red spots had begun to appear on it, and she signaled the side of the fat lady to keep quiet, and then offered to borrow her towel to use it. The righteous fat lady saw the situation, directly responded to it, and Enpu also dodged a bullet again. Soon arrived at the third level of observation. This level is to be selected by the face reader to see who has more prosperous husband's face. Upon seeing the first girl, the face reader said that her heavenly court was not full, her earthly pavilion was not square, and her aura was soft and weak at first glance, making her unsuitable to be a royal consort. When it came to the second woman, he said that she had a broad forehead, and although her eyebrows were quite blessed, she was not suitable for marrying into an imperial family. As the statue viewer commented one by one, Enpu suddenly realized that this statue viewer was not looking at the face at all, but was constantly measuring the sashes of the showgirls. She turned her head to look around and realized that there was a red dot floating on Jin Zhuoyan's sash, plus the fact that the palace maid had sneakily gone to find her alone before the election and there were still red drops of ink on the ground, so reacting to this, she immediately took off the hairpin on her head and then pierced her finger, dripping blood onto her sash, and soon looked like she was walking in front of her. After seeing the red spot on her sash, he looked up at Enpu's face, and then directly froze in place. In order to be able to have the face of the princess, the woman took off her hairpin from her head, and then endured the pain and quietly pierced her finger, sticking the blood directly onto her coat pocket. When the face reader came forward to look at the face, once he saw the red spot on her coat pocket, he rushed to measure her face, and then directly patted the horse's ass, saying that her face is beyond normal, like a phoenix possessed, is definitely the right choice for the princess. But just when everyone was shocked by it, the statue of the viewer went to another girl in front of her, after seeing the same on her coat pocket also has a red, then directly stupid in place. Can only hard to say, she also has the face of the princess.
이게 무슨 소리입니까? 대체 어느 분이 왕비의 상이라는 게요?
Hearing the sister's portrait was even more difficult to begin with, because he only knew that the red dot on the sash was the Prime Minister's daughter, but did not expect that two would pop up at once. In the end, after some more choices, he sided with Enpu's side, so that it won the first prize for the observation of the elephant, just for the previous frame-up to pull back a game. Soon, it was time for the last selection, and the sisters brought a bunch of purses containing slips of paper labeled with how much silver the showgirls had touched to be used for the benefit of the people. After one day, whoever could get the most votes from the people would win. Soon, under the arrangement of the sister, Jin Zhuoyan was the first to go up and pick up. After locking eyes with the courtesan who had arranged for her, she immediately drew the purse that contained the most silver in the room, with a full 100 silver pieces written on it. Soon, everyone started to take turns to draw in order. When Enpu came forward, she randomly chose one of the two remaining purses, which contained only 1 or 2 pieces of silver. The participating showgirls all began to go out. Some of them were delivering cloth on the streets, some were delivering food on the streets, and some hired doctors to see the people on the streets. The rich and powerful Jin Zhuoyan even set up a banquet, intending to feast the people. Just when Enpu was walking on the street not knowing what to do, suddenly, she seemed to see something on the street. Immediately after that, she ran to a store and bought a large pile of rice paper, then went to a corner next to a straw mat and wrote lawsuits for the people in the city who had grievances but nowhere deep, and soon, the people who got the news ran to line up. Jin Shuiyan learned from the palace maid side of the matter, so rushed to the Unpu there to check. After seeing the people write down all the accusations of their Jin family oppression of the people's sins, annoyed and angry, she immediately shouted to let the Unpu with their own to go to the small hutong to talk about. The Unpu want to see what he gourd sold drugs, so it should be down. But unexpectedly just into the hutong, Jin Shuiyan is not speaking martial arts, suddenly slapped Unpu face. Unpu saw this and did not spoil her, directly backhanded a slap back. Just when the great battle between the two was about to start, Jin Shuiyan, however, lets the subordinates of the palace sneak in from behind, directly knocking out Yunpu with one hand, and then locks her in a small cart of wooden boxes. On the other hand, the emperor who was taking a nap suddenly had a nightmare that his princess was kidnapped by someone else, so he hurriedly wanted to take his guards out of the palace to look for her, but just before he took 2 steps, he suddenly recalled the nightmare he had just had. Because in the dream Unpu was kidnapped to a dry well, so he rushed to people to find a map, and then after determining the location, directly with troops rushed out. At this time, Unpu had already been kidnapped by Jin Shuiyan's men to a small dark room, and sent thugs to guard the door. When Unpu woke up, she looked around and tried to break down the door, but the thugs outside the door were angered and rushed into the house, trying to make a move on Unpa. At this time, the emperor followed the clues to find over. Unpu was so shocked that she fainted. When she woke up again, it was already dark. And Pu wanted to go back quickly, but the emperor was extremely annoyed by this, saying that she had just almost lost her life, yet she was still thinking about being the king's consort. If she is really so fond of the crown princess, she should just ask her to admit that she is the dead crown princess, and she can resume her status as the crown princess directly. But Pu said in exasperation that it was all because of her. If he hadn't always thought of himself as the dead crown princess and exposed his identity, then he wouldn't be in such danger now. On the other hand, Sangong sees that it's getting late and Unpu hasn't come back yet, so she announces that she's disqualified from the competition. But unexpectedly, Unpa suddenly rushed back at that time, and then revealed that she was kidnapped. Sangong tried to get her to return to the team, but Kim Juum suddenly came out and said that she had just announced that Unpa had been eliminated, so now Unpa couldn't continue to compete. Sangong doesn't say anything but just takes out Unpo's altar and pours out all the votes that the people gave her. The people all looked dumbfounded at this because Unpa had gotten more votes than all of them put together. Sangong tells the crowd that she will report Unpo's being on the list to the Empress Dowager and let her decide if Unpa will stay or go. Unpa looks at Kim Ju-yeon and sees that a revenge drama is about to unfold. In order to be selected as the crown princess, the scheming woman hypocritically invited the showgirls who were running for the election with her to have a drink. The simple-minded ones sat down unsuspectingly. At this time, Unpa casually grabbed a piece of pastry from the table, but before she could put it into her mouth, the greedy fat sister suddenly reached out and took it. Because there was some strange powder sprinkled on the pastry, so after sniffing it, she inquired with a surprised face what was sprinkled on it. Seeing this, the woman hurriedly lied that it was peanut powder rewarded by the Qing emperor, and then grabbed a piece and shouted for Unpu to taste it quickly. Unpa took it and stuffed it into her mouth. Seeing that she didn't react at all after she ate it, the scheming woman instantly realized that Unpu's identity was a forgery. Turns out that just yesterday, after Unpa escaped from the kidnappers, although the sister wanted to keep her eligibility, she was opposed by Kim Ju-yeon, who insisted that she provide evidence of her kidnapping. So Unpu then found her in the middle of the night, and subsequently clutched a piece of white paper, telling Kim Ju-yeon that she had proof in her hand that she had sent someone to kidnap her. If she doesn't take it upon herself tomorrow to tell Sangong that she had seen someone kidnap herself with her own eyes, then she's going to bring this matter to the emperor's attention. Although Jin Shuiyan said that she didn't believe it on her lips, she was very panicked about it in her heart. After saying that, Unpu directly got up and left. And because Kim Ju-yeon had a ghost in her heart, she took the initiative to tell the sister that she saw Unpu being kidnapped during the meeting the next day. Soon after, the Sangong told the elder empress, who, upon seeing this, immediately reinstated Unpa's eligibility to compete. And so it was that Unpa successfully advanced to the next level. Upon learning the news, Prime Minister Zhou found his daughter Jo Young-ji, who always felt that Unpo's identity was very suspicious since he had met Unpa and also her sister. In order not to let her miss her daughter's becoming the crown princess, he sent someone to find out that the Hong family's youngest daughter was allergic to peanut powder, so he took a packet of peanut powder to Cho Young-ji and asked her to find a way to make Unpu eat it. If Unpa didn't react when she ate the peanut powder, then she would definitely be the fake Hong family's daughter and he himself would find a way to eliminate her directly. And now, after seeing that Unpu didn't react to the peanut powder when she bare downed it, Jo Young-ji immediately rushed home and told her father about it, who told her that she didn't need to worry about the latter and that he would take care of it for her. The showgirls were discussing what today's chosen item would be when the sister suddenly walked into the room and told them that the grand concubine had contracted a wind cold and didn't have the stomach to eat, so now they would have to have each of them make a dish item. Soon after, the palace maid brought over the altar and had them draw for the type of item to be made. But after the selection, all of them were dumbfounded. Because this competition requires them to draw the same dish of 2 people to make the same food, from 2 of the same dishes eliminated one of them. Enpu and Fat Sister 2 people drew dessert. Fat Sister, although people righteous, but at this time, she cannot care about the humility, directly a brain grabbed the table all the good use of the ingredients. In this way, Enpu had no choice but to make a bowl of soup dumplings at random, while the Fat Sister made a bowl of fancy dough. Soon, the palace maid served the food. Although Empress Defei wanted to eliminate En, but because she herself didn't know who made the stuff, after eating Enpu's soup dumplings, although she found it mediocre, she didn't pick out any faults, but after eating the dessert made by Fat Sister, she directly spat it out in one mouthful. The Fat Sister outside the door almost stifled her laughter when she saw this, hard to see this, and asked her why she did that. The Fat Sister smiled and told her that just now when she was cooking, she suddenly thought of her mother at home, and compared to the food in the palace, she preferred to eat the cooking that her mother made for her at home. Moreover, she saw that Enpu was so obsessed with the matter of choosing a consort, so she added a large spoonful of salt and gave the opportunity to her. Enpu was very grateful to see this, but right after the competition ended and she sent the Fat Sister out of the palace, she was just about to leave when she suddenly saw a familiar figure not far away. After the Crown Princess selection will move on to the next level. This round will be contested by the Empress Dowager, who dislikes Enpu the most. She would love to eliminate Enpu from the competition at this level, but she is told that she can't look at the people during the judging. The competition officially starts. This time the task is to fulfill filial piety for the sick Empress Dowager. Every 2 people have the same question in their hands, which means 1 out of 2 will be eliminated. Kim's daughter and Kim Juyun's topic is to use ginseng to make chicken soup for the Empress Dowager, but there is only 1 ginseng in the whole palace. In order to get the ginseng, Kim's daughter and Kim Juyun start to fight for the ginseng and they don't give in to each other. The other 2 people are to use chrysanthemums to make tea for the Empress Dowager. But in the winter, where can one go to find the chrysanthemums? Enpu and Fat Sister are going to make dessert for the Empress Dowager. In order to advance, Fat Sister also completely disregarded the sisterhood at this moment, took away all the noble ingredients first, only left a plate of red beans and glutinous rice flour. There was no other way, Enpu could only use the remaining ingredients. She scooped a bowl of glutinous rice flour, mixed it with some water, and under his nimble little hands, a white and tender dumpling was born. Together with the strained red bean water, a bowl of red soup dumplings was ready, but an important seasoning was missing. Without sweetness, how could the dumplings be eaten? Enpu had to turn to the Fat Sister next to him to give him some seasoning. However, while they were talking, the courtesan next to them started to do something bad and grabbed a handful of salt and tried to put it into the bowl. Luckily, the king's internal officer saw them, and caught the courtesan in the act. The courtesan was so scared that she begged for forgiveness on her knees, and the bowl of soup dumplings was saved. Soon, the desserts they made were sent to the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager first tasted a mouthful of the soup dumplings made by Enpu, and felt that the flavor was okay, just that the sweetness was a little lacking. She looked at the colorful balls made by the Fat Sister. The color was quite attractive, and she wanted to score full marks based on her face value, and scooped a spoonful with great anticipation, but ended up spitting it out just as soon as she got it into her mouth. Must not be Princess Su movie has all the advantages of the Fat Sister, just like this lost the game. Enpu looked at the Fat Sister and felt a bit unbelievable. The Fat Sister told the reason, through these days together, saw Enpu trying so hard to be the crown princess, so that's why she intentionally put more salt to lose the game and give the opportunity to Enpu. In the end, Enpu succeeded in advancing to the quarterfinals. On the other hand, on the side of the Kim family's daughter and Kim Juyun, the 2 chose to work together to make a bowl of ginseng chicken soup, and eventually the Empress Dowager allowed them both to advance to the quarterfinals at the same time. As for the other 2, one found the seed of chrysanthemum and said that if the Empress Dowager planted it, she would be able to drink chrysanthemum tea next year, and this woman was directly eliminated from the competition. The other one made a handkerchief embroidered with chrysanthemums for the Empress Dowager because she couldn't find any. The Empress Dowager looked at the handkerchief embroidered with chrysanthemums and was so satisfied that she let her advance to the final 4. On the other hand, Prime Minister Zhua has investigated Enpu's identity, and it turns out that she is really the daughter of Jiang Yishou. Prime Minister Zhua thought that Enpu was the late princess and deliberately revealed the news to Lord Kim. The next day, Lord Kim finds the Empress Dowager and discusses how to remove Enpu and how Enpu will be able to escape this crisis. The woman seemed to see something strange and nervously moved forward to get a better look, but she realized that the body of a courtesan was lying on the ground, and was frightened and panicked. Soon after, the officials came to the scene, and after examination, the woman was poisoned to death, and then investigated the people around, and learned that the dead courtesan never came back after meeting with Enpu last night. The officials questioned Enpu and Enpu said that she did meet the court lady last night, but she just came to deliver a letter to me and left after delivering the letter. The officials came to Enpu's room to search it and soon found a bottle of poison, and a letter. With that, Enpu was taken away as a murderer and sent her to jail. And all of this was actually a plot by the Queen Dowager and Lord Kim, who thought that Enpu was the late crown princess, resurrected back to take revenge. And the personal palace made beside the Queen Dowager, and know too many of their secrets. The Queen Dowager then told her to go and deliver a letter to Enpu, and then instructed Lord Kim to kill the palace maid when the letter was delivered. However, the loyal palace maid did not know that this time the delivery of the letter was actually her own death letter. Eunpoo opened the letter, which clearly states that her father's murderer is right in front of her eyes. Eunpoo looked at the courtesan in front of him, feeling a bit puzzled. However, the next morning, the courtesan had died. Learning that Eunpoo was captured, the king was very anxious. He knew that Eunpoo must have been framed and wanted to go to the heavenly prison to rescue her, but suddenly he thought of last night's dream, in which Eunpoo fell asleep and a person with an orchid handkerchief secretly put poison into her bag, and judging by her dress, she should be one of the candidates for the crown princess. The king thought it was to Kim Ju-yeon who did it, since there was a similar orchid on her dress, so he found Kim Ju-yeon to question her and forced her to ask if she was the one who was framing Eunpa. Kim Ju-yeon immediately felt aggrieved that the king she adored would suspect her so much, and the king was helpless. He had no choice but to seek the help of the king's main mother so that he could order a search of all the candidates' rooms, and soon found the orchid handkerchief from the dream. The king immediately found the owner of the handkerchief and questioned her as to who had ordered her to do it. Seeing that the matter was revealed, the woman immediately knelt on the ground and said that she was under the orders of Lord Criminal Judge, who had used her parents' lives as blackmail to force her to put the poison into Eunpoo's baggage, and that she had no choice but to follow his instructions and hope that the king would forgive her. The judge is loyal to the Kim family, and he is about to torture Eunpoo, but the soldiers arrive in time to arrest the judge, and the Kim family threatens the lives of the judge's family, forcing him to take all the blame alone. Thus, Eunpoo was acquitted. Looking at the king who saved her from danger again and again, Eunpoo could no longer hide her heart. She said she must win the competition, become the princess, find out the murderer who framed her family, and unravel all the conspiracies, so that she could be happy with the king. The king takes Eunpoo into his arms with deep love, but the prime minister is also plotting a huge conspiracy to get his daughter elected as the crown princess. There will be a grand final for the royal concubine selection. The winner will be crowned as the royal concubine, and this time the examiner is the grandmother. The question is, if you become the royal concubine, you have to give up one thing. What will you give up? The Jean family's daughter was the first to answer. She took out a wooden box containing a pair of embroidered shoes, and then said, what she would have to give up were the shoes that her uncle had given to her. If she was able to become the crown princess, she would definitely not let the family dictate power and become a snobbish crown princess. She would draw a line with the family. The Empress Dowager coldly looked at this niece in front of her. She had gone to great lengths to help her, but this was the result, so angry that she wanted to slap this niece to death. But the king's grandmother was quite satisfied with this answer. Next, it was the turn of the female face to answer. What she wanted to give up was the dress during the preliminary election. She said her dress was scratched during the preliminary election, and at that time she did not dare to say anything even if she was scratched by someone else. If she became a princess, she would have to give up her former self. Looking at the face of the king's grandmother, it was clear that she was not satisfied with this answer. Finally, it was Eunpoo's turn to answer. She opened the wooden box and what was inside were actually chopsticks and spoons. The queen mother laughed at this scene, and then Eunpoo explained that ordinary people use wooden spoons to eat their meals, and poor people even collect pine leaves or steamed earth cakes to eat. He wanted to become the king and the bottom of the people's buttons. The upper class people use tableware. The bottom of the people have never seen. If she becomes the king's consort, she is willing to give up the tableware used for eating, try to integrate into the lower class, and wholeheartedly assist the king in governing the country. This answer left everyone present speechless, and the king's grandmother had an answer in her heart. Regardless of appearance or intelligence, Anne Bitter was clearly the best of these contestants. Preparations were made to crown Anne Bitter as the new crown princess. Just as she had drafted the bull, the king barged in, angrily tore up the bull with one hand and demanded that the king's grandmother install Sang daughter as the king's consort instead. This operation directly baffled the royal grandmother. Isn't it Eunpoo that you like? Why do you suddenly want to install someone else as the king's consort? It turns out that it's all because of the prime minister. This woman passed the layers of selection and was supposed to become the queen, but at the moment of the impending enthronement, the king suddenly changed his mind and made the ministerial daughter the king's consort, while she only became the side consort. The king rushed to comfort her, saying that he was forced to do so. Prime Minister Zhuai had already known Eunpoo's true identity. If he didn't do that, then Eunpoo would definitely die and even the Hong family would be implicated, so he had no choice but to agree to Prime Minister's conditions. Eunpoo was naturally touched by this. Then the king came to the royal consort's bedchamber and should have caved in with the new royal consort, but at this moment he told him coldly that he and the Fae's daughter were only a nominal couple, and definitely would not love. As a princess, she felt aggrieved that she was treated like this by the king on her first day in the palace, so the next day she deliberately made things difficult for Eunpoo, saying that since Eunpoo was assisting the king with her, of course she would be the main one, and if she continued to bewitch the king's heart like this, she would be the only one who would be able to help him. If the king's heart is compelled in this way again, she will definitely not spare Eunpoo. Eunpoo could only bow his head and admit his mistake. Eunpoo receives another letter from her father's best friend, who asks her to meet him at the back of the mountain, and Lord Beck threatens Eunpoo's mother's life, asking Eunpoo to poison the king. Eunpoo's heart begins to struggle with the question of how to choose between her mother and her beloved king. At night the king had another dream, in which he saw Eunpoo pouring something into the teapot. When he woke up, the king felt very strange and decided to go to Eunpoo's bedchamber to find out the truth, so he asked someone to tell Eunpoo in advance that he would go to her bedchamber tonight. After arriving at Enpu's room, the first thing the king saw was the teapot on the table, and looking at the tea Enpu poured for himself, he knew that something shouldn't have been put in the tea, but he still intentionally picked up the tea, looking at Enpu in front of him and slowly brought the tea to his mouth, and just as he was about to drink it, Enpu knocked over the teacup with one hand. The angry king grabbed Enpu's hand and asked her who she really was and why she was pretending to be the princess. Why was she pretending to be the princess and what did she want to do? What is she trying to do? Looking at the king, who loves her dearly, Enpu finally tells the truth, that she is the daughter of the Kong family, who met the king when he was a child. Looking at the king, who loves her dearly, Enpu finally reveals the truth, that she is the Kong family's daughter who met the king as a child. The princess who was shot on her wedding day was actually her twin sister. The king immediately realized that his first childhood love was the woman in front of him, but he still didn't understand why Enpu had to poison herself. It turned out that Enpu was also under duress. The king's cousin wanted to usurp the throne, and Lord Beck used her mother's life as a blackmail, and he himself had no choice but to die himself, but she still had her mother to save and avenge. The king finally realizes Enpu's plight and orders that Enpu's house arrest be lifted, stating that he will definitely help her save her mother. Soon Lord White is arrested and under the king's pressure, he admits everything and gives Enpu's mother's address. Learning that her mother had been rescued, Enpu blamed herself even more in her heart, knowing that her crime was unforgivable, and asked the king to grant her death. The king said in an aggrieved voice, "How can you be so irresponsible? I have loved you since I was a child, but I confessed my love to your sister, and the person I love in my heart is you, but I miss your sister every day. Now it's hard to wait for you, but then I was almost poisoned to death by you. Is there a king in this world who is more miserable than me?" Enpu apologized repeatedly, saying that she would atone for her sins by killing herself, and turned to leave after that, but the king pulled her back and then gave a deep kiss. And this scene happened to be seen by the passing Sagittarius woman. Suddenly very angry, she secretly vowed to find a way to get rid of this woman. A war between women is about to begin. This woman had a hard time becoming a princess, but was abandoned by the king on the first day of her wedding. It turned out to be that the king loved someone else in his heart, which made it very difficult for her. In order to gain the king's favor, she secretly decided that she must get rid of Enpu. So the Sagittarius secretly went back to her mother's house and gave orders to the assassins in the house, then returned to the palace and told the king's grandmother that she wanted to go to the mountain to pray for the king's son and asked the two side consorts to go with her to open up a new branch for the royal family. The grandmother gladly agreed. That night the king had another dream in which Enpu was shot and killed. The king was directly scared awake and immediately came to Enpu's bedchamber and told Enpu not to go out of the palace in the near future, as there are people who want to kill you, but Enpu said that he would accompany the side consorts to the mountain tomorrow to pray for blessings. If someone wants to kill me, it is even more important to go. It is likely to be the real culprit behind the shooting of my sister, the only opportunity to draw out the murderer. I cannot let go of this. Seeing that Enpu decided to go, the king had to send someone to secretly protect. The sedan chair stopped halfway, and the rest of the way was a rugged mountain road that could only be traveled on foot. Just then, however, the assassin also appeared, and he pulled the trigger on Enpu. A gunshot rang out and the personal maid quickly stepped in front of Enpu. Looking at the maid who died in his arms to save his life, Enpu was overwhelmed with grief. The Sagittarius woman was also saddened, because if the killer was caught, there was a high probability of finding out that she was the mastermind, and assassinating the king's side consort. That was a capital offense. Enpu's eyes gradually became cold. He came to Sangdu, told the other side will find out the truth, make the murderer pay a terrible price. Sangdu found her father to seek help. The left prime minister slaps at his daughter. He is about to be furious. It was so hard for himself to make his daughter a princess, but then he did such a stupid thing. Now everything is ruined. Knowing that the tide had turned, the left prime minister had no choice but to take his daughter and run away in the night, and before he left, he intentionally spread the word about Enpu's birth. At that time the twins were designated as ominous. A group of people kneeled outside the palace, pleading with the king to execute Enpu, and Lord Kim even fanned the flames in the courtroom, asking the king to give an explanation to the people. In order to save Enpu's life, the king had to put her in the cold palace for the time being. But that night, Enpu was captured by a group of men in black. The king was so anxious to learn about the capture of Enpu that he found the sorcerer and begged bitterly to be allowed to enter the dream world again. After the sorcerer cast a spell, the king soon entered the dream world. In the dream, Enpu was tied up, and because he failed to rescue him in time, the left prime minister and his army wanted to kill Enpu. The king woke up with a start and remembered the name of the mountain, so he immediately ordered his soldiers to raid the mountain and captured the prime minister and his daughter alive. But there was no sign of Enpu, who had been taken up to the snow-covered mountain by the army. In order to save Enpu, the king came to the snowy mountain single-handedly, and the two of them had a fierce fight. Soon the king gained the upper hand, and as the soldiers swarmed over him, the army, realizing that they had no power to turn back, killed themselves, and the prime minister and his daughter were given poison wine, ending their sinful lives. The Jin family was also involved in this rebellion and was exiled from the army. The king took complete control of the court, restored Princess Enpu and decreed that twins would henceforth be a good omen. When the dust settles, the king and Enpu can live happily ever after, but unexpectedly the king suddenly faints. Enpu learns from the witch that this is the price the king paid for forcing himself into the dream to save her. The witch tells tells Unpu that the king's body can only recover if you leave. At night Unpu bows to the king and yips that this is the last time she will be bowed to by the king. A few days later, the king finally came to his senses. After a year of recuperation, the king's body healed, but he never gave up the search, and finally found the news of Unpu. The king was so excited that he burst into tears. The two of them met again after a year's separation, and the look in their eyes at that moment was worth 1,000 words. The king walked into the yard, hugged Unpu, and told her that she could not live without you in the days to come. At that moment, Unpu's mother came out of the house with a baby in her arms, and after receiving the baby, Unpu told the king that this is your son. Looking at his big, fat, white son, the king's joy was overflowing, and the family was finally reunited, and has lived a happy life ever since.